Josh Appel is the public address announcer for the Miami Marlins at Lone Depot Park. He's also a play-by-play broadcaster for the NFL on Sports USA. And for next season, he's going to have to learn a lot of new teams for a lot of players who have moved over the last couple of days. So I want to start with the Dolphins, Appel. What's your take? So yesterday, correct me if I'm wrong, Crowder, it felt very dreary around here. It was like every hour there was another loss. And
a big name loss.
Big name loss. And now you add Shaq Barrett, though, so it feels a little bit better today. But where are you at with the Dolphins and what's transpired since free agency started?
I think on the front end, we need to, as I'm sure you guys have, just recognize that they've lost a lot. And on paper, they are not as good today as they were 2 days ago. However, I think they added at linebacker a very similar player, if not one that's maybe slightly better, in Jordan Brooks to replace Jerome Baker. Shaq Barrett should fill the void that Andrew Van Ginkel left. But I still look at this core, and I'm thinking to myself, like, the guys that they lost at those certain positions, to me, like, they're not game breaker, game changing guys, right? Like, for as good as those players were, not that they're getting the blame, but like as good as those players were, and they had these guys, like, there wasn't a whole lot of, like, it didn't make them better than the Bills, didn't make them better than the Chiefs. And I understand that, like, okay, maybe you take a step back with Christian Wilkins, but I mean, guys, it's getting $27.5 million a year. Like, good teams get the first 4 or 5 seasons of Christian Wilkins and then let somebody else pay him a big contract like that. Robert Hunt is getting $20 million a year from Carolina. Like, those contracts are not good business when you're a team like the Dolphins. And they were already so far over the cap that going into this, you knew they were going to lose guys like that. I mean, you give credit to Christian Wilkins. He bet on himself at one of the reports where the Dolphins offered him around $20 million before last season, before those conversations took a pause. And congratulations to Christian Wilkins. He was an awesome Dolphin. They'll miss him. But you can't give out $27.5 million to a defensive tackle when the Dolphins are in the situation they're in. You just can't. You can't give $20 million to a right guard when you're in the situation that the Dolphins are in. That's per season, what Robert Hunt got. So I think they'll have a little bit of a challenge replacing a guy like Christian Wilkins for sure. But like the idea that there's this some massive drop-off. When you look in the division, and Hawk, you said it, Jacoby Brissett's probably going to be the Patriots starter this year, along with whoever they draft. The Jets are the Jets, and until I see them perform over the course of a full season, to me, like, I don't even factor them in. And Buffalo, they lost a ton of guys in their defense and a couple guys in their offensive line too. So I'm looking at what's happening in the division right now, and I don't see that much different of a scenario for the Dolphins going into next season. I really don't. Again, on paper, they are not as good as they were 2 days ago. They lost a few really good players, but I don't think the bottom line is like so drastically different. And I think we need to just kind of see how the rest of the offseason plays out into the regular season. The Dolphins have, I know this is a long-winded answer, I'm sorry, but the Dolphins have always been the team that wins free agency every year. Always, before the last couple. Like, they were always the team giving $20 million to a guard or the big contract to Ndamukong Suh. Like, they were always that team. They're just not that anymore.
Oh,
yeah.
Mike Wallace. Oh.
They're just not that.
And that didn't get them anywhere.
Right.
Yeah, it didn't. Did because Chris Grier's getting a lot of criticism. Like you just said, and you laid it out perfectly, where Chris Grier did try to re-sign Christian. I've read that report as well, where they tried to offer him 20. Did Chris Grier drop the ball? Are you criticizing him? And I know there's a long offseason left. He added those pieces, added the linebackers, added Shaq Barrett. Like, they're trying Brewer, the center, to replace Connor Williams. But did Chris Grier drop the ball on any of this in your mind?
I mean, anytime you lose guys, talented guys who you drafted and were here for that whole time, like, yeah, it's going to hurt. And I think there is a little bit of criticism deserved. But I think that fans, and when they look at general managers, yes, obviously there are some that are great, some that are just okay, and some that are bad. That's just how the nature of that, profession, that job is. But can we choose the criticism for Chris Grier that, like, can we just pick one? Is it that he can't draft, or is it that he can't keep guys around? Because if he can't draft, then why are you complaining about all these guys that he drafted who are going to get big contracts from other places? Like, I just want us to be consistent in how we criticize Chris Grier as the general manager. It is indisputable that over the last couple years, he has put together a roster and hired a head coach that has the Dolphins as close to winning a Super Bowl as they have been since Dan Marino was the quarterback. That is indisputable. Now, they are still a little far from it, as we have learned at the end of the down the stretch last season and into the postseason, kind of what they're missing. But I think it's hard to say that he dropped the ball when two of the guys they lost got two of the 5 most expensive contracts on day one of free agency. Like, I don't know what else in that spot he's supposed to do. Because
don't let them get to that point is what he's supposed to do.
But if
lock them up.
Fair. And if he's trying to do that, and Christian Wilkins says, no, I think if I have a good season, I can get more somewhere else, then what can you do? If Andrew Van Ginkel wants to go back to the Midwest and play in the Midwest for longer term on a contract, what can you do? I think there is certainly some criticism to be levied on Chris Grier, but I think that, like, as a fan base, the Dolphins fans he's the scapegoat, or he is just the guy. Like,
let's go around the room real quick before Solana asks his question. Who thinks Chris Grier is a good NFL general manager? I do.
I do as well.
I got him.
Crowder's raising his hand. Solana, you're the only one who doesn't? Because I love Chris Grier. I love Stephen Ross. I love Mike McDaniel. Like, I like everybody who seems to be in place there.
They're everything you want a general manager and owner to be. They are not afraid to take big swings and make the big moves. They are not afraid. It's not like they're penny pinching out here. Some things work, some things don't.
We talked about it yesterday. I really liked Chris Grier. Chris Grier actually came up to Gainesville and worked me out as a regional scout. So I've had a relationship with Chris Grier for a long time. It has nothing to do with what I'm about to say. The last couple years, I think Stephen Ross opened that piggy bank and they went out and started paying. They went and got Tyreek, made him the highest paid receiver. Went and got Jalen, went and got those guys. I like Chris Grier with the big bat swinging other than trying to lay some bunts down real quick.
And don't forget, if Chris Grier decided to give out the big contract to either Robert Hunt or Christian Wilkins, then you're looking at an offseason later on, next year or the year after, when it's time to extend Jalen Waddle, when it's time to extend guys like Javon Holland. Where's that money coming from? It's tied up in the most expensive or one of the most expensive defensive tackles in the league.
I like a lot of what you said, by the way, because I agree with you can't just throw money at guys for the sake of throwing money at guys. That's bad business. And I happen to agree, Chris Grier, he is used as a scapegoat a lot. But hey, that's the business of sports. Yeah. When your team has a 20-plus year playoff drought, the general managers are going to come under fire. And when I look at Chris Grier, I agree with you. He's had a lot of good draft picks. He's had a lot of good acquisitions via free agency and trade. And he put together the best roster I've seen in my lifetime in a Dolphins season. Guess what? Since 2016 that he's been a general manager, they have nothing to show for it. And that's my gripe with it. Like, how could you say a general manager is a great general manager when under 8 years of his guidance, they have nothing to show for it? So, I'm not saying he's terrible. I don't think he's the worst general manager in the NFL.
By Solana. I don't want to sound wishy-washy, but I raised my hand. But maybe if you take a more telescopic view of everything that's going on, because obviously guys that he drafted were valuable in this free agency period. But Solana brings up a good point. I guess if you look at his tenure in totality, there's no playoff win.
I'm not even saying he deserves to be fired. I see the vision. I do. And he's missed on some guys. He's gotten some good guys. I think that 2020 draft is, unforgivable, probably. But, hey, you've been here since 2016 as a general manager. And I know Tannenbaum or whatever, but 2016 as a general manager, and you have 0 playoff wins. To me, that's the issue. And you can't call him a great GM if he hasn't won you anything in 8 years.
Well, then they have 3. I that's a fair point, and I agree with you. But what is it? 3? Was he the GM the Gase year in 16 when they made the playoffs with Jay Ajayi? To see because that's 3 playoff appearances in 6 seasons, and he gets a knock a lot. I see. Oh, he's been with the organization for 20 years and he's survived all this stuff. Like, yeah, when you work your way up over a decade and a half before you become general manager, you're not the one making decisions. Like, there are plenty of scouts and personnel people in the NFL that are under GMs who quote unquote underperform, who are very good at their jobs, who end up sticking around in other places. So like blaming the entire tenure of Chris Grier at the Dolphins, like from when he was an intern until now, is always a funny criticism to me. I'm not saying you are. I agree. What you're saying is totally fair.
And I'm really taking 2019 forward. Like I look at the 2019 rebuild year, 2020 draft to now, and I say, hey, you had all these picks. You tanked for a season. You put your team trying to literally guys on the field to lose games, and they ended up winning 5 for this moment. And you couldn't win a playoff game in 5 seasons. So I look at that, and I know we've asked a ton of people. I look at that and I say that's a failure. And whether you like it or not, hey, you're held responsible. You're the guy calling the shots. And Chris Grier is the guy calling the shots.
Well, Solana, I think you're moving the bar because, like you just said, this is the best roster you've ever seen in your lifetime. And what are you, 28, 29 years old? Since 2016, 5 teams have won a Super Bowl. And then you go back to they didn't win a playoff game. If they do what the Buffalo Bills do every single damn year and make it to the divisional, would you be happy? Would you be happy if we made it to the divisional every year?
Crowder, I'm not telling you that I think the Buffalo Bills should be celebrated because I think they've underachieved, but you wouldn't prefer to lose by 3 points in the divisional round to Patrick Mahomes every season than lose the one time you make it to the playoffs, get blown out by the Chiefs with Tua Tagovailoa? I mean, come on, what are we doing here? You'd rather lose. You'd rather lose playoff games and not win playoff games.
People getting amputations and stuff.
To me, it's a silly argument. Oh, well, look at the Buffalo Bills. I mean, they can't get past the divisional round. All right, at least they're getting to the divisional round. At least they have playoff wins.
But I would say, though, too, if you look at it like that without context, yeah, it's fair. And it's true. But, like, Tom Brady retires and then Josh Allen immediately takes over. And, like, that's how it is. So you got to find ways to beat those guys. But, I mean, when that happens, like, oh, all right, that's another challenge in front of him. And just, it hasn't worked out to a playoff win yet. But I think that there's so much context around his tenure as general manager that, like, while it is definitely obviously true they haven't won a playoff game with him, like, I think there's more to it than just that in a vacuum.
Somebody texts in, this is fair, and I don't know if they're trying to criticize me, but it says, Hoch, this makes no sense. You say Chris Grier has great draft picks, great free agent signings. The team doesn't win. He's the problem. He got good groceries. Who the hell's doing the cooking? And maybe, if you're Chris Grier, and certainly, I mean, if you're Chris Grier, you're going, hey, I keep giving you all the assets. I keep giving you all the pieces. And it doesn't matter. I don't know if we decided it was Adam Gase or not, but it doesn't matter if it's Adam Gase or Brian Flores or Mike McDaniel. Like, I can't give you better ingredients. I don't have the right person cooking. I mean, maybe that's it.
I mean, it seems like they have the right guy cooking now.
Well, up until the end of last season.
I mean, are we going to use that as the sample size for 2 seasons of what?
Well, it's recency bias. I mean, it's the most recent thing that we have to go off of. I mean, they had myriad opportunities to not be part of this particular conversation.
And to be honest, do we know that Chris Grier? And this is another thing we don't know. Now, speaking of what you're saying about the cook with the groceries, how much did Chris Grier have to do with Chan Gailey being here? How much did Chris Grier have to do with some of these OCs? What was that? The next year at Chan Gailey, we had 3 different offensive coordinators calling plays. We had a million damn penalties because we couldn't get the play call to the quarterback. Like, we don't know what part of Chris Grier had to do with that, but he had some terrible coaching staffs under his tenure.
He has to have a lot to do with it, but I do laugh at people who defend Grier and Appel. I'm not saying that you're making bad points. Like, I genuinely understand what you're saying, but the idea that the general manager isn't to blame for everything that follows underneath him within the organization. I mean, look at the Heat. They're going to finals, and they whiff on Damian Lillard, and people are calling for Pat Riley to be fired. Like, that's the job.
No one was calling for Riley to be fired. Who was calling for
but
Riley
that's also
to
dumb.
be fired? I mean, that's crazy. Straw man.
But, like, okay, scenario.
Your brother.
I mean, there was no one blamed Riley for that. What are we doing here?
We blame the dude in the
Trailblazer
guy.
Riley and Ellisberg are getting slammed for the past couple seasons,
From
not being able to acquire.
Who's slamming them?
Jimmy and Bam another star, and hey, they've won 3 titles and got to the NBA Finals 2 times in the last 4 seasons.
Who slammed them?
I want to know who slammed them. Was it the Sports Brothers?
I just want to remind Dolphins fans that the Heat have been to 2 finals in the past 4 seasons.
Jeff.
Was it Beast? Zaslow? Who was it?
Depot?
Depot? Was it the guy that Appel brought on for 3 hours from Boston?
Great guest.
Thank you. He was. He was
still talking about him. He got that job with the UFL because of that appearance.
I enjoyed
true.
him.
I'm actually getting 10%.
We got to go. We're up against a break. We love you, Appel.
I love you guys.
That's very nice. That's nice.
I'm proud to
hear.
be your B-side.
Josh Appel, you'll hear his booming voice at Lone Depot Park this month. When do the Marlins open? 28th?
28th, 4-10 against the Pirates. By the way,
Very
nice jersey,
exciting.
Solana.
Very exciting. Yeah, he's
Hey,
ready for
Appel.
a little ball tonight.
Hey, Appel, where's the player family section? Because I got an in right now.
Oh, you want to know who Crowder's friendly with all of a sudden?
Yeah, let's hear it.
Appel knows. I texted him before the interview.
Oh, that's a good one. That's a good one to be
Yes,
friends with.
they're like tight all of a sudden.
Hey,
Nice.
I'm gonna use my connects.
And I'm gonna
Hey,
next
man.
time I see him, I'm gonna name drop you again. I
Drop
love
him.
the name drop Crowder.
I mean,
There
he's
we
going to
go,
be
man.
sitting, Crowder's going to be sitting with the families, courtesy of Jazz Chisholm, and I'm going to be sitting in center field, courtesy of Appel, next to Mike Cunha with a black coffee in a styrofoam cup.
And you're gonna love it.
I'm trying to get in the
And you're going to
dugout.
love it.
I'm trying to get in the dugout, Hawk.
I'll be closer to Islas Canarias. Come on, Solana, talk to me. People are slamming Pat Riley. Ooh,
Yeah.
ooh. Todd
People on the-
Castleberry? Who's slamming him? Ryan McGuire?
Guzio.
All right, we got to go. Guzio? Guzio's all over him? As a Knicks fan. All right, we got to go. Josh Appel, thank you. Let's take a break. We'll come back with more Hochman and Crowder.